Hi, welcome everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the best time for planned giving and really just planned giving overall, but also why planned giving is really important right now. So I want to welcome our people who are here today, and we like to keep it really conversational, so feel free to jump in and ask questions. I am Elizabeth Finlayson, the CEO and lead coach of the Nonprofit Coach. And my mission is to create a fairer, more equitable, and inclusive world filled with empathy and beauty. My team and I do this by supporting our clients with strategic planning and fundraising training and support. Yay! All right, let's keep going. So let's talk about why now is the perfect time for planned giving. So for some people, it may feel that here in 2020 during a pandemic there is no perfect giving and who wants to do this and we can't do that. I hear a lot of negative messages from nonprofits who are really scared right now. I'm going to pause my share because I want to talk about why it's actually a great time for giving, but why it's particularly a great time for planned giving. So what's been great is I'm connected with a group of coaches, and one of them came and sent us some information about the Great Depression and about how giving went during that time. And why this is helpful is if you can look at the things that are happening right now, they haven't happened in a really long time. Um, but the things that are comparable are things like the last pandemic, like the Great Depression, and things like that. So there's some information that came up in that that is really helpful. One of the things is that, as we start looking and saying, oh my gosh, there's no way, we can ask people for money, or there's no way anyone's going to make a gift. One of the things to know is that from 1929 to 1931, overall giving adjusted for inflation actually went up. Okay, so it's like right at the beginning of the Great Depression. Then it goes down for a couple of years by about 24%. Now we look at that and we say we can tie that to actually as the stock market went down, it looks like the major gifts that were tied to stock gifts went down. Then there's some, but then it bottoms out at 1933, and then giving more than doubled between 1933 and 1941, reaching and surpassing pre-depression levels by 1937. So the rate of growth for the 8 years between 1933 and 1941 has seldom been equaled during any other 8-year period. This was put out by Robert Sharp Jr. So first to know, people saw the crisis that was happening and they stepped up and they said, how do we solve these problems? So did giving go down in some areas? It did. Were there times when it was harder? Yes. But you can see people are also at the same time trying to rise to the challenge. So what does this have to do with planned giving? Well, one of the things it has to do with is that bequests became a larger percentage of giving during the Great Depression and accounted for a lot of that growth. So now we'd say, well, why? Why does that happen? Well, planned giving, while on the nonprofit side can sometimes feel complicated. I know one of the people on our seminar today is a financial planner, so it's probably not complicated to him, but for many of us, it feels complicated, or it feels like something that we don't know or understand. Um, but when you think about it, you're not giving away actual dollars in the moment. So that makes it a lot easier. And when people are feeling uncertain, as they are right now, they know that they want to help people, but they also want to protect some of their money. And plan giving allows for a lot of that to happen. Um, the other thing I want to say is that giving recovered with the stock markets and employment during the Great Depression. Um, and so people who were predicting that giving would stay down and everything was really difficult started to look at like what was going on. Well, many people don't realize America is the most philanthropic country in the entire world. And we have exported a lot of our philanthropy to other countries, and other countries are imitating us and the way that we do that. Now, one reason is because we don't have a lot of government paying for a lot of the activities that we do, as we do in, say, some European countries. But part of it is also, I think, a lot of that frontier spirit and the way that we had to pull together as communities to survive difficult times. So what we realize is that people consider their core giving tied to their religion, their deeply held interests and beliefs, and they treat it more like utilities and movie tickets, and or more like utilities than movie tickets, and they will cut out other types of activities before they cut out giving. So, but the other thing to know is during a time like that, they are less responsive to arm twisting, gimmicks, or other ways that people try to strong arm dollars out of people. It's really more related to people's core beliefs and their sense of values and their sense of self. So that's the thing to be thinking about when we're looking at how do we want to encourage people to give during a time like this. So I'm going to stop there and just say, who has questions? What are the things that you want to think about, or what comes up for you when you hear this?
I am trying, oh, go ahead, Gare.
Just that last two sentences, because you say it one more time, which
Ooh. Um,
ending of, it's like, uh, what are people?
Gimmicks, no gimmicks. What
yes.
is it?
Yes. So you might think back to before the pandemic, there were some really fun challenges that were going on. You know, there were ways that giving can be tied to, well, maybe I don't know much about this organization, but I really want to do this fun, silly activity. And so maybe there were social media pictures or events that were going on that were very just kind of fun and silly. And it was less related to how you feel about the organization or their mission. That kind of fundraising is less compelling when you're in a challenging time like we are right now, in which, if I'm choosing between, am I going to pay for some extra online classes for my kids, or, am I going to give to something that feels crucial to my community? I might choose to do something crucial for my community, but I'm not going to just like pay for any old silly thing, or I'm not going to have my arm twisted into something. I'm not going to respond to things that are not related to my own core values.
Okay.
Does that answer it?
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay.
What I was going to say was,
go ahead.
What I've noticed in our preparation for the gala is that we're getting more people interested because I'm guessing it's because we're explaining to them the necessity of their dollars and what it's going to continue doing, because they'll go on and look at our silent auction, for instance, that's going on right now. And if they can't find anything, or they've placed a couple of bids, the next thing is they're buying one of our opportunity drawing tickets. And I've been watching the pairing up of those sorts of activities over and over, and we sold out of our gala.
Wow.
I'm blown away. I mean, we were only wanting at tops 110 people. We're at 122. So we're just going to put out the word that we're sold out. If a few more dribble in, maybe I'll ask the host or whatever to have 10 people versus 8. But, we're just like capping it off. So the messaging, I think, was really important so that people knew if we don't do this, these people won't be here to continue doing what we've gotten used to them doing all these years. So we've gotten a lot of new donors,
Wow, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And we do find in the last, like the Great Recession, the last recession we had, we saw organizations succeeding by broadening their coalitions. So maybe the average gift went down overall, but the number of donors went up. And I definitely saw people trying to give where they can. I remember, one letter that just sticks in my mind was someone wrote his letter, said, we're cutting back on a lot. See, it makes me a little emotional. But yours is one of the things that we're going to keep doing this year. And so, you know, it was just one of those things that was really touching, and that like we understood how much the organization meant to those people.
And the other thing that came across our desk that, Gary, I haven't shared with the board in totality, one of the people who helped our organization passed away. He was almost 92, and he was a fundraiser. He was a force in our community. His wife was a city council woman for 32 years, and flowers started flooding their house, and they said, stop, you know, if you want to contribute to the honor of him, here are the 4 charities that mean something to him. And it was a hospital, the Boys and Girls Club, the Rotary, and Agua Hedionda. And I mean, we were honored and humbled beyond belief that, you know, we were in that list of, you know, the major league, so to speak. And we raised over $3,400 from this man's legacy, like people just wanting to give to what he cared about. That was another aha moment for how people respond and what people respond to.
Absolutely. Such a great point. And what I hear in there is like really the importance of relationships. You know, like his relationships, your relationship with him and his family, and how that then translates into people's behavior. It's something that can't be emphasized enough in fundraising. It's really a relationship business. So let's talk about how we get started with planned giving. A lot of the organizations I work with are small to mid-size. And so we're not talking about, you know, I worked in an organization where the way they got started with planned giving is they hired 2 planned giving officers, one of whom was a lawyer. They set up a bunch of complicated pieces, and then they sent out a lot of marketing materials and kind of waited to see what would happen. Most organizations that I know are not in the position to do that. But I also think that it probably isn't necessary to start. One of the things I recommend with most organizations is to look at what you're already doing and see how you can build on it. So if you, for instance, already have a major giving program or are doing any type of major giving, planned giving fits really nicely into that. They're not completely the same people who are giving major gifts and giving planned gifts, but there's a lot of overlap. It is very relationship based. You are going to have conversations. Both major and planned gift giving often require an in-person ask if you're being proactive about it versus just being notified that someone put you in their will, or having dollars show up out of nowhere, which is how I see a lot of organizations do it. The thing to know about planned giving is it's a long-term program, right? If you're talking to donors who are, you know, let's say in their 60s and they put you in their will, you may not see that gift for 20 or 30 or longer years. So it's really about consistent messaging. It's about making it available. It's about making sure it's on your website. It's about making sure it's at the bottom of a lot of your pieces, so that when people are at the place where they're going to be making those decisions, they are thinking of you as an organization that does that. Let's just stop a second and just talk about what we're communicating. Because if we're putting consistent messaging all over the place, what is it we're communicating? And I think Lisa hit on this, is why does somebody want to make a gift, and particularly a planned gift? So we want to make an impact beyond ourselves, is why we're making any kind of gift. And then when we're talking about a planned gift, we want the value of it to be beyond our own lifetime. That's a pretty significant commitment. And so what we're doing is doing something that's an expression of our own values. And so what you want to be doing is communicating what is the value of your organization and what is that value long term. I know we've got some people here from Agua Hedionda Lagoon, in which we're talking about an organization that is a staple of the community. We're talking about an environmental impact. We're talking about its impact on people and the community. So those are some things that I see. And then I'd love to just ask you guys, you're right here. What do you see as some of the long-term value of your organization?
definitely educating the future lagoon stewards so that they know the value of the amazing habitat that we're in, and then getting trails that they can experience the beauty of this epic piece of water that's in the middle of Carlsbad. So those are two things. And then the third thing is really just the conservation piece. So we educate, we have access through trails, and then we have a conservation piece. And we try to message all three of those often. I never like to have to invent a wheel that's already invented. And I was looking at another organization yesterday that consistently struggles, and they just changed their name to Living Coast Discovery Center, which happened in the last like 3 or 4 years. And I was like, Discovery Center is my thing. But then all of a sudden, that word just popped up everywhere. Discovery Center, Discovery Center, Discovery Center. I was like, so how do we set ourselves apart from that, right? Well, I'm on their website, and lo and behold, they set themselves apart from us. Their planned giving entirety on their website. I mean, it's just beautifully done. And so that was one of my questions for you today was, is it okay to look at best practices that are out there and start replicating them so that we don't have to just create from scratch? Because I know Gary's busy, and I'm not going to hire 2 planned giving for major gift people. So I wanted your opinion on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing is, in the nonprofit sector, we're really all on the same side of making the world better. And, I think we all borrow and steal from each other constantly. And it's why like I do these webinars is, we're constantly learning and teaching each other, because we know that when one organization goes down, there's tens and thousands of people that are affected by that. So absolutely, if you're seeing something that another organization does that works, go ahead and do that. And I think one thing I feel fortunate is, one, having had great mentors in my life, and two, watching those mentors reach out to other development departments in similar organizations in the same city and say, hey, by the way, this grant deadline just came up. You might want to apply for this too. And I'm thinking, like, aren't they our competitor? And they're like, no, there's enough for all of us. We really need to be helping each other to succeed. So, I would say in the case of this other organization, you could even give them a call and ask, and you can offer them something. Maybe there's something you've learned in your event planning that allows, them to be more successful.
Yes, actually, Samantha and I had a conversation about that they needed a little of her and I in there because they are temporarily closed, but they have all this outside space, and we did not close. Our governor's orders were to close museums, but what we did is we pushed all of our exhibits out to the door edges, and we have a dozen to 2 dozen visitors daily come through. We shortened our hours, and we're serving the community, and we're staying relevant instead of just shutting our doors and hoping that things will be okay when we emerge from this pandemic. So that's what we said. We should call them and give them some ideas on how they can do their thing. So I will do that.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. And I
No, it
think
was your idea. I just stole it.
well, good stealing. Keep stealing away. I think the other thing that I hear there too is that, when you mentioned hope, like, someone once said to me, like, hope is not a strategy. We can like be hopeful and wish for the best, but if it's not paired with like action, the organizations I see struggling the most right now are the ones who have gone into inaction and really were paralyzed by a lot of the news. And I remember when I was on staff side during the Great Recession, I remember those internal conversations. Should we ask? Shouldn't we ask? Are we relevant in this moment? What about this? What about that? And it is terrifying, and I think you're really navigating this really well, in that you are not allowing the moment to stop the action. And you can try things, that some things will work really well, like your event, and some things might not work as well, but you need to keep acting. So great job. Let's talk a little bit about what to put in a planned giving brochure. You know, this day and age, brochure is a very broad term that could mean an electronic document on your website. But certainly I think many people, you know, Gary, before we got on here, you mentioned about like how we ask, you know, how do we have these conversations with people? And we'll get to that in the next slide, I believe. But one of the things I find is that people are most comfortable in the asking position when they have a thing in their hand, you know, when they're like, I am going to pass this to this other person. And there's something psychological about that. And I think also the other person feels good when they have a thing in their hand and it's something to refer back to, and it makes the conversation more tangible. So when people are thinking about what kind of material do I create, nowadays I think it's easier than ever. There's all kinds of access to design tools and designers, and we can, you know, create PowerPoints ourselves on our own computers. But you should have something, let's just say that. And I definitely recommend with starting something on your website is thinking of that as maybe the first page of your planned giving brochure. We talked earlier about like, you know, why donors give and their long-term impact. I really, one of the communication and messaging areas where I see organizations struggle a little bit is when we have our internal caps on. That'll happen when we're using a lot of jargon, when we assume an inside knowledge about our work and that other people know those things about it. Um, the other thing I see is when, because we know all the amazing things our organization does, we don't speak to the other person as though we want to help them to feel like it's a valuable thing. And so we assume a lot of inside knowledge. We act like it's really great. We kind of give them a list of the things we're doing. We wish the list could be longer, and then we kind of just wish it luck and we move on. And we never really get into what they want. Like, what are they trying to do? So for instance, if I'm filling out my will, well, I know I'm thinking about my husband and children. I know I'm thinking about, you know, protecting the people I love. Okay, so let's say I've done that and that's more than covered. Well, now what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about the sadness over that in my own life. I'm thinking about who I am and who I want to be. And then I'm thinking about how do I make an impact? So then I'm going to start thinking about my own values, and I'm going to think about how I want to be remembered. And so as I start to think about those things, that will motivate why I want to give. And so whatever you put on paper or on a website, or what kind of in-person conversation to have, really be thinking from that perspective. What are they trying to accomplish? It's hard to think of our organizations this way, but our organizations are really just vehicles. They are vehicles to help groups of people, and they are vehicles in which some people get to express their desire to help. And we are some of those people that get to express our desire to help. But in the end, the organization itself is a vehicle. So with that, we know we want to talk about long-term impact. You want to tell stories and have pictures. So your stories are going to be people that you're helping, ways that you're helping. Your stories are also the donors themselves. So this is something I think that good planned giving professionals do, is they typically have somewhere a picture of a typical planned giving person. I will say that while I've seen a lot of these as older white couples, um, it's true, that's what I usually see, but I would say single women actually make the most planned gifts
Mhm.
because they don't have people to pass it on to, and they want to make an impact. So that is actually the typical planned gift donor. Um, and, you know, I think all of us as organizations right now need to be looking at when are we speaking to primarily to people of privilege. And so I understand plan giving is in some way an expression of a vehicle of privilege because you have enough to give on to other people. But whenever we can and we can widen that base, it's really important that we think, you know, am I only showing a particular type of person? So I just want to caution that. But stories and pictures of a typical planned gift donor, so someone who's in the right age range who might be thinking about this, someone, and then stories of your clients, or in your case with the lagoon, it could be pictures of like the animals in the lagoon itself. That's part of your impact. Facts. So Gary and I were speaking earlier about how we pair both our heart and our head. So those are really important. We want those pieces together. If we're looking at long-term impact, I'm actually going to show you a brochure, but we want to make it clear for people this long-term impact. So I'll show you some images with that. Ways to give. Now this alone could be an entire webinar. It can be very complicated or it can be very simple. On the simplest end, someone can make a bequest and just say, "Hi, I'm putting you in my will." That's it. Okay. People can also transfer over stock. They can also mark your organization as a beneficiary on their IRA or some kind of benefit they have from their company, for instance. Maybe they already have something and they don't need it, and so they can sign one over to you. We start to get into more complicated things when we get into land or real estate or things like that. This is where it becomes important to have a gift acceptance plan so that you're prepared to be able to say, I will accept this or I will not accept that. I will accept a stock gift, but I sell it right away. So I'm not in a position of having to produce reports on this every year. There are complexities that are there. There are far more complex planned giving vehicles like charitable gift remainder trusts and things like that. And Gary, you probably know lots of those things, but for starting off, start simply. When you get to the place where you want to have a lawyer involved who can help you get those things drafted, go right ahead, but just start simply to begin with. I'm going to open up a sample here if I can. Let's see. Yes, please do. Yay. Okay. So I found this when I was doing some searching. Lisa, you had asked about stealing ideas. If you just if you just Google planned giving brochure, there are so many on the internet and they're beautiful. There's lots of great ones. So I would look and get a sense of like your style, your colors, your organization, all that kind of stuff. And so you can start to say, oh, this is what people are doing. And you get a sense of like what you like, what you don't like, what matches your organization. But I just wanted to show here what I liked for this organization is it's very simple. I will say I usually see a lot of white space, I'll use the term, in the design around planned giving brochures because it gives people kind of space to breathe. These images, you can see, kind of a typical planned giving couple, but also they keep using this imagery you'll see of like growing something that's turning a seed that's growing into something else. You could see pictures of people. In this case, because they're a community foundation, they're not focused on one particular thing. So they actually have a challenge in that they have a broad impact, but maybe not one particular thing to focus on. What I liked this image, they kind of show, okay, well, in year one, you're doing this, but here's how this acts over time. This is the impact of that gift, and they had this beautiful graphic to go with that. I thought that was really helpful for getting people to understand their impact beyond their own lives, and particularly for an organization that maybe might have a harder time focusing on one story or one particular piece. I also thought this was helpful in that it's really simple. So
can I ask?
Go ahead.
I'm still looking at your PowerPoint.
Oh, is it not? Thank you for telling me that. Thanks. Here, let me re-share again and see if it will come up.
I went to start Googling because I was like, oh, okay, she wanted us to Google. That was an action item. And I was like, as you're describing, I was like, no, she's wanting to share. Sorry.
Yes, no, thank you. All right, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Heartland Legacy Alliance. Okay, great. Yes. Okay, so now you can see it. All right, so you can see, as I said at the top, there's some pictures. And you can see here this image of the growing tree. So in year one, you can see $100,000 gift, and now they're showing you this is impact over time, this $138,000 in grants and services and 326,000. You know, and they've got little bits of fine print around, you know, what this means. But, you know, as I said before, it's an image that helps you understand the impact beyond your initial gift. And the initial gift, which is quite substantial of $100,000, is actually just shown as a seed. So to show that and really its longer term impact over 50 years. Now, if you look at this sheet here, there's a lot of simplicity. Again, you see the imagery around growing. Um, it's talking about a lasting legacy. So it's like, so, you know, we started, there was a gift here, and then this is what it's going to do. And they're really using the example of a very particular gift to make the case of a long-term impact. And that makes it more concrete for people. And then you have these questions here, you know, who can do it? Where can I do the most good? That kind of thing. You know, and then getting on to how do you do it. So I thought this was a good sample. I definitely think you're going to want to put in things like in what ways someone can make a gift. And then obviously, you know, it goes without saying contact information. Make sure there's a person that they know how to reach when this is done. So they continue, you know, with the same imagery, the same colors. You can see again, you've got, you know, these donors and their quote. So it's giving you a sense of who's making these gifts. And then again, they're going back to impact. Here's all the different ways that the organization is, you know, using your gift and how what it's going to do.
That's great. I like the piece.
Yeah, thanks. I thought it was really simple, you know, and I think that's the key for people sometimes is really just that it doesn't have to be super complex, you know.
I already emailed Samantha to see if she could, if not now, right after Gala, get one of our volunteer graphic artists that came out of this pandemic to help us in creating we call them trifolds here. So, I don't know.
Yes, exactly. Trifold brochure. Very good. Yes. Okay. So just a sample right there. And
Awesome.
all right, can you see this slide? How do I ask for a planned gift?
Yes.
Okay, yay, good, it's working. Okay, so how do I ask for a planned gift? I actually want to translate to the first question is really who do I ask? It's usually a lot simpler to ask when you know it's a good idea. So I think most of us walk into those ask meetings a little bit nervous. That's perfectly fine. You know, I've been doing this for 20 years. I still get nervous. I had been an actor before this, so I used to know if I was going on stage, I would be nervous. And there was one time I wasn't nervous going on stage, and that made me really nervous, and then it was all fine. So, you know, it's part of the process. But there's a difference, I think, between, you know, being a little bit nervous and being prepared and then walking in blind. So we don't want to do number two. So who do I ask? Again, like you want to be looking at who you have relationships with. So for many of us, if we're looking at our organization, we're going to start, there's people probably off the top of our head that we already know care deeply about the organization, have a good relationship, and have made gifts at a significant enough amount that we think, I think that person, if the conditions were right, would be willing to make a gift like this. So I think for a lot of us, we can make a short list like that. For many of us, it would involve current board members or past board members. It might involve founding members of our organization who may still be involved or not. You know, high-level community members might be people, depending on our connection or relationship with them. So that's how we might start off with our short list. Then I like to look at my database. I like to pull lists and kind of jog my memory and kind of think through people. So if I go through, I'm going to look, okay, who's maybe made a gift at a higher level over the last few years? Oh, I think we're holding up a spreadsheet over there, Lisa. Exactly. So you've got your list where you're looking and you're like, okay, who's been giving in a way that indicates that they could make a substantial commitment to the organization? Okay, now let's go a layer beyond that. As I said to you before, a lot of planned gifts are made by single women. And a lot of times, for the majority of bequests that an organization receives, they come as a surprise. We will be told out of nowhere that that we are in somebody's will, or we'll receive a gift out of nowhere. When you look at those people, they tend not to look exactly like a major donor. So they may not have had the same level of resources to give away during their lifetime, but maybe they don't have heirs. So that's one of the things. But what you can look at in your database is to do another search, and you can look for people who have been giving consistently over a long period of time. If they've been giving 10 years, 20 years, maybe not at a high dollar amount. This is a good place to look for your monthly givers and say who actually shows up over and over again. Because one thing that monthly givers and plan givers have in common is loyalty. So they see your organization as vital to the community and vital to their own expression of values. And so when you look at who's been giving consistently over a long period of time, you may find people who are not maybe giving high dollar gifts right now, but would be able to in the future. So that's kind of your next layer down of people to go and maybe send that new plan giving brochure to, maybe reach out to and have that conversation.
We just had another, I've had several aha moments during this gala push, but we had somebody sign up, 2 people to our gala, and we're like, name sounds familiar. And we looked, and over the last 9 years, they've been giving us $60 a month, not a month, a year for their family membership. And now all of a sudden they're coming to this gala. Like, that's all they ever have done. And now they're coming to the gala. So I'm eager to have them sit next to Gary's group.
I got 2 spots that I'm left open for you to fill for me.
That's exactly it.
Right? That's how these things roll,
Yeah, consistency, loyalty, relationship, communication. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, great example. And we've talked about building it into your other communication. So put it at the bottom of your newsletter, put it at the bottom of an email that you've got a plan giving program. Just put it out there. Like I said, most of us are going to be surprised by the plan gifts that show up. I think it's a good idea to have a plan for what you're going to do with those gifts. Is it going to go in an endowment? Is it going to go towards certain types of programming? Is it a rainy day fund? How do you plan to use those? Let's talk about in-person asking, because I know that's where it gets tricky. And Gary, I think this is what you were asking in the beginning. So why don't you start by asking some questions, Gary?
Okay. So, like I said, what I do is help people, protect and grow their money. And in my business, and it's very close to their heart. In fact, their money's more important to them than their health. A lot of people, I think, but so at least that's what this industry says. But anyhow, so
you need my son Preston to come on board with you, because that's exactly, it is the closest thing to him, money.
Yeah. And I can understand that, but if it's close to, I'm getting to this point where it's close to the heart, it's close to the things that mean something to you also. And so I struggle with and I'm getting over it. I struggle with, how do I ask people to give $10,000 worth of stock and I have to exclude my current clients. I'll invite them to things at the event, which I've done. I won't be the direct ask though. I'll let them jump in the boat with us if they want to, but that's kind of a conflict for me. But they'll let them know what I do and what I believe in, and honestly, it'll probably take care of itself. So but in people that I'm new to and that I don't know and don't have a relationship with, which Lisa does, which she's got so many relationships out there, that I think there I'm formulating in my mind this attempt to, what's my role and how will I get to that, to the point where, how do you, will you give us $100,000 of your $10 million, estate, and bridging that gap. And so I look at things that I say is, okay, we'll have Zoom meetings for people that want to be, we'll invite them to an event. And we'll invite them to a specific event for plan giving, or leave, and then attempt to introduce the idea to them. And like you said earlier, maybe it's like dating and for 10 years and not getting married. It's like, okay, so, well, okay, are you going to ask me for money or not? And I need to bridge that gap. And I'm getting there with the education about learning. So some ideas from you would be helpful, is like, okay, what's that process, and what are some of the things and that we can do, that I can do and be thinking of to get to that point where, we've got those stocks, shares showing up in the account, or we can create one of the other programs. I know it's doable. Lots of people do it. There's lots of foundations out there, and I want to be helpful where I can. So I don't know. Did I ask any questions in that, or?
I think so. Like, what I hear is like really the fears that are there. Like, what are the fears and why are they there? I think one of the things that I think helps is for people to understand that giving is both altruistic and selfish. And so I think when we think about like having and keeping your money as a self-centered activity that people want to do, and giving is an activity they don't want to do, that we have to like pry out of their hands, particularly if there's a relationship with that person, that feels very uncomfortable. But in reality, the act of giving, people absolutely get a giver's high, so when people are able to make a gift similar to, you can buy a car, you can buy a great pair of shoes, you can, make an addition to your house, you can make the world a lot better, these are all things you can do with your money. In the end, what is the point of having money unless it's doing something you want? What I often find with fundraising is a lot of people are out there making money. They don't have time to make the world go work the way they want it to, and they are more than willing to pay somebody else to get the world doing what they want it to.
Wow.
Just as like they pay someone else to do anything else.
Yeah.
I know a donor like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, they want to build a bird sanctuary, and they know that they need to have a certain climate on the council to do that. So their first step is supporting the council people who are running that will support their ideology, and then go from there and build that coalition.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like what you just said. That's great.
Good. So, I think to think about is we've talked a lot about people's values. So what you want to be looking at when you go to meet with a particular donor is you want to understand, why have they been giving up until this point? And don't make assumptions. I think a good example that was provided to me early in my career was like, take a hospital. So a hospital is easy because they have patients that they can go to. It's not actually easy, but it seems easier, right? So you say, well, great, I have this person whose life was saved by open heart surgery. I'm going to ask them to support the new cardiac wing. So you're having all these conversations with them about this, and they seem kind of disengaged, or maybe they're going along and it's interesting. If you've never taken the time to ask, what you don't know is that the hospital actually saved their niece with cancer, and that's what they want to fund. And so we don't know what's motivating people to be attached to our organizations and to be interested in making a gift. And it's really important that we find those things out and have those conversations before we ask for those larger gifts, because once we ask for that larger gift, what we're really saying is, like we talked about, you care a lot about, pediatric oncology, and therefore we are going to take this and we're going to use it for that. And not only that, you mentioned that what was the greatest part of your niece's experience was how, her interaction with the doctors and nurses. And so we're actually adding a special family area where the kids are going to feel really comfortable before they get treatments. That's an ask that's very particularly tailored to that individual person. They know why you're asking, and you know why you're asking. And that's far more comfortable than, hey, give us $100,000. We need it for our hospital, right? So
Yeah.
I think when you're really approaching it from that perspective, it becomes a lot easier. The other thing I would say is there's two of you right now on this team, and you should go in as a team. So you want to have a person who is in the community and has a relationship with them, and you want someone who's on the organizational side. So as a minimum 2 people, maybe 3. And what helps with that is it makes sure that somebody does the ask while you're there. It also, you can divide it up. Someone's going to tell the organizational story. Somebody's going to talk to the relationship with that person. Somebody's going to talk to their story. And then you're going to get to that ask. So you're going to cover all of those pieces. And when you do it as a team, it's easier.
Gary?
Yeah.
I really feel like our short list would have people on it that maybe, are a long-term before we would get their gift. But I think that they'd be great for us to practice our shtick with.
Sure.
So Leslie and Jim and
Sure.
Mike and Cindy, our honorees next year, they both are couples that have been giving for a long time here.
Right.
The entire time I've been on board. And
I'm with you. Yeah.
both couples don't have kids. They have nieces and nephews, and I'm sure that there's that, but they may want their life in this community to live on in perpetuity in a way that we could have that conversation.
So just a quick question on that, Elizabeth, excuse us for this, but so on Jim, and like, what's his special thing about the lagoon? I mean, like Elizabeth, you had said this person about their niece in the hospital. Does Jim, do you know, Lisa? You know Jim very well. I mean, I don't know them that well, or the other couple that you know. Do you know about that? I mean, is it because it was his first, he taught a fishing class there, and I don't, what is the hook that keeps Jim driven by being, committed to the lagoon? You know what my hook is? I mean, you know me.
Well, I think, if you want me to answer Jim, he's a Navy man, and this is water, and water is important to a Navy guy.
All right. Awesome. Okay.
That's the intrinsic part. For Mike, he's an environmental engineer. This is an environment. So
all right. Great.
They both happen to be Rotarians as well, that they have a propensity towards philanthropy. We would be giving them a vehicle to go one step beyond what the Rotary gives them the ability to do. We have an actual brick and mortar place that they could be, in perpetuity, a room named after them, or a garden section, or a play area for kids, so they have all of those opportunities.
So that's the stuff I don't know. You do, and that's awesome. Great.
Great. I'll give the history. You do the ask.
Sure. Well, we can work on that.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being on today. If anyone wants to contact the Nonprofit Coach, this is the phone number, 773-615-1938. And you can find past recordings of webinars like this at thenonprofitcoach.guru. Thank you.
You're great, Elizabeth. Thank you.